Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington today, addressing Congress for the fourth time, most of any foreign leader.
The visit effectively putting Washington, D.C. on lockdown, especially around the U.S. Capitol. Thousands out in force to protest the Prime Minister's handling of the war in Gaza, the failure to reach a ceasefire, and hostage negotiations. CBN National Security Correspondent Caitlin Burke is at the Capitol. Caitlin, describe the situation or the security situation there.
John, Tara, I was here in 2022 when the Dobbs decision came down, and I thought security was tight then, but they have really taken things to a whole new level today. The Capitol and the entire surrounding area completely locked down, roads, sidewalks, everything. There's a huge law enforcement presence. We've noticed not only Capitol Police, but also at least 200 NYPD officers. Now, of course, these security precautions are necessary because of the backlash Netanyahu faces for his handling of the war. At least thousands of protesters were gathered today. Capitol Police reporting that pepper gas was deployed when some members of the crowd turned violent, refusing to obey orders to move back from the police line. During his speech today, Netanyahu addressed the protesters directly.
When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
Netanyahu said that defeating Israel's enemies will require courage and clarity, and accused the protesters of standing for a cause that they don't understand.
Many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas. They stand with rapists and murderers. They should be ashamed of themselves.
The Prime Minister went on to address many of the accusations against Israel, including that they're committing genocide in Gaza.
For Israel, every civilian death is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. They actually want Palestinian civilians to die so that Israel will be smeared in the international media and be pressured to end the war before it's won.
The Prime Minister called for the U.S. to continue to stand with Israel, stressing that if they fall, America is next. Meanwhile, the deep divisions in Congress over Netanyahu's leadership during the war on full display, with some Democratic members boycotting the speech, and Vice President Kamala Harris, the president of the Senate, also not in attendance. Her office insists it was simply a scheduling conflict, but Republicans calling her absence inexcusable.
Madam Vice President, you say you want to be the leader of the free world, and yet you can't bring yourself to sit behind our most important and strategic ally in this moment. That is not a good look for you. It's not a good look for America.
Now, Vice President Harris and President Biden are expected to meet with Netanyahu in the White House Thursday. Then the Prime Minister heads to Mar-a-Lago to meet with former President Trump. John, Tara.
All right, CBN National Security Correspondent Caitlin Burke. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Well, Victoria Coates is with the Heritage Foundation, where she serves as Vice President of the Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy. Victoria, welcome to Faith Nation. First off, can we get your reaction to Netanyahu's speech to the joint session of Congress? Do you believe that he said enough to bolster his image and Israel's position, not just with his home audience back in Israel, but really on the world stage?
Well, John, Tara, good to be with you. And I think it was a very important day for the Prime Minister, and his speech was extremely strong and was very well received by the majority of the members of Congress that were there. And important to also note that they were, the bulk of our Congress was there, which means the bulk of their constituents agree with this, and that they support Netanyahu and as the duly elected leader of Israel. And they support Israel in its fight against Hamas, because they know it's also a fight against us. You know, the Prime Minister made that point very powerfully during the speech that, yes, they start with death to Israel, but the next chant is death to America.
Victoria, we saw several empty seats from Democrats who boycotted this speech. What does this say about deepening divisions in Congress, and how will this affect America's support for the war in Gaza in the coming months?
It's really shameful. I mean, this should not be a partisan issue. Even if you don't agree with Netanyahu's politics, he is, of course, the duly elected Prime Minister of Israel. He's Israel's longest serving Prime Minister. There's no suggestion that he is in any way, not properly elected, not democratically elected. And the United States doesn't get to pick the politics of our partners and allies, just as we would work with any Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, for example. We should be able to work with any Prime Minister of Israel who represents the Israeli people. And so I really thought that was shameful. I think it suggests the kind of tactics that we've seen from the heavily anti-Semitic, anti-Israel boycott, divestiture, and sanction group, the so-called BDS people, who were very prominent amongst the protesters today, who, by the way, came right past the Heritage Foundation this afternoon.
A two-part question for you as the former national security advisor to President Donald Trump. What are the differences between Israel and America's relationship under Biden versus Trump? And then what do you think the policy might look like with Vice President Kamala Harris if she were to be elected in November?
Well, John, thank you for the promotion. I was actually Deputy National Security Advisor under
well, you
President
should have
Trump.
been.
Well, that's much appreciated. But no, I think it was night and day what we experienced versus what has happened under President Biden and what is likely to happen under President Harris. I was actually speaking to a former colleague in Israel right before I came on set, and he was saying to me, there's just nothing compared to what we used to have in terms of our bilateral relationship, and it's very hard to watch. But I think it comes down to a simple formula for your viewers, which is 4 years of Donald Trump brought us the Abraham Accords, the first peace deals in the Middle East in a quarter century, and 3.5 years of Biden-Harris brings us October 7th. That is the choice. These policies have results. We know what they are. And so, Vice President Harris, who employs as her national security advisor a man named Philip Gordon, who's amongst the most virulently pro-Iranian and anti-Israeli people in foreign policy circles in Washington, who would likely play a very prominent role in a future administration, who has been fueling her very strongly anti-Israel position, and I think that would continue.
All right, Victoria Coates with the Heritage Foundation and correction, former Deputy National Security Advisor under Donald Trump. Thank you so much for your time and being with us and sharing your insights tonight.
Thank you very much.